Yeah, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you've never seen any of my content, I am Coach Roundtree. On this channel, I post interview tips and career advice to help you elevate your game. This video is all about the 5 most common job interview questions. Here's the thing, team. I've been on hundreds of interviews the last 20 years of my professional career, and I'm always asked these 5 questions. In this video, I'm going to give you a strategy to answer each one, a sample answer, and pro tips that help you pass your next job interview. Before we dive in, make sure you like this video and follow and subscribe for more career tips. All right, here they are. These are the 5 most common job interview questions. Please screenshot this. I'm going to talk about each one of these questions and I'll provide you with an example and a strategy to answer each one. So the first thing to call out, depending on how long your interview is, that's how many questions you should expect. If it's a 30-minute interview, they're going to ask you 3 questions. The first one is always tell me about yourself. And then they'll grab 2 more questions from these most common interview questions. It could be tell me about a time when you led a team or tell me about a time when you managed conflict. The reason why they're not going to take up the full 30 minutes and ask you all these questions is because they typically, as an interviewer, I'm going to allow 5 to 10 minutes for you to ask me questions. So that means you only really have 20 minutes in a 30-minute interview to ask questions. So that's why you're not going to get every single question. Now, if it's a 45 to 60-minute interview, you're going to get asked all 5 questions. Now, let's break down each one of these questions. The most common job interview question ever is tell me about yourself. Your strategy should be the 3 W's. Who am I? What I've done? Why I'm here. This is a sample answer that I've used literally in job interviews. You can see 2 things. First, it's very short. I've literally been on job interviews. I've asked this question to a candidate that I'm interviewing for an open role I'm trying to fill, and that person spent 15 minutes trying to tell me about them. And it was a 30-minute interview. So all the things I had planned to ask this candidate, I could not because they hadn't practiced and they just kept going over and over and over again. Think of your tell me about yourself answer as an elevator pitch. How long does it take you to get from one floor to the next on the elevator? It's literally seconds or a minute or 2. So that's how long you should take to answer this question. Tell them who you are. I always like to also add where I'm from because it's a small world. So tell them what state or city or country you're from. There could be a connection there. That's why I make sure I tell them I'm from North Carolina because I've actually landed my first job ever because the person I was interviewing with, they knew my high school football coach and I had the job the first 30 seconds into that role. So make sure you tell them where you're from. And again, be very specific. Talk about your superpowers. That's another tip. That's something that companies now, they want to know what you're great. What's your God-given ability? What are something that you're naturally good at? And being able to communicate what your superpower is something that they're going to write down in their notes. Like, okay, Marcus's superpower is building authentic relationships with stakeholders. Oh, we need someone that has that in that role. So make sure you communicate that. But yes, this will be the first question you're asking every job interview. All right, tell me about a time when you led a team. It's also very common. When you get these specific questions, always use the STAR method. STAR stands for situation, task, action, result. That's a structured way to answer any of these tell me about a time questions. Now, these questions are behavioral interview questions. And the reason why a company is asking you that because it's a good predictor of what you did in the past, could predict on what you're going to do in the future in that specific role. In this example, I'm laying out the situation. I was a sales manager. I'm looking at the sales report and I'm not hitting my sales performance compared to other stores. My task, I'm looking to develop a strategy at the sales plan. I go through the action and result. Make sure whenever possible in the result, you can also bring the outcome and always talk about what you did. I was able to drive the sales performance. I was able to help us achieve this outcome. This is a place where it's all about I, not we. Make sure you take the credit whenever you give an example for this very common interview question. This next question is easily the hardest interview question to answer, but it's very common. Tell me about a time when you failed. You want to use the STAR method as your strategy, but also be vulnerable. And that in your results section, always talk about what you learned. And this example is all about an HR manager needing to fill open roles for key positions And if you look at the bottom in the end result, they only filled one of the 3 roles. But always talk about what you learned and how in this example, hiring is very hard. Be reflective. What you don't want to do with this question, I've seen others make this mistake, is, oh, I've never failed. I'm perfect. I don't make mistakes. That is a huge red flag. Everybody makes mistakes in corporate America. You don't want to make that common mistake with this answer and just, well, I can't think of anything. Well, no, be vulnerable, be transparent, and also show the maturity of, look, this is what I learned. I tried to do this project. I tried to execute the strategy. It was not successful, but I learned this so that in the future, I won't make the same mistake. You will earn respect for the interviewer by being vulnerable and showing, you know what, I tried my best, I failed, but you know what, I'm going to get better because I learned from that experience. This is also, it could be a tricky question. You will be asked directly in a job interview, why do you want this job? Especially if you're what's considered job hopping, if you haven't been in your role for 18 months or longer. Why are you actually looking for a job? Your strategy here is the 3 C's: your company, the culture, and the customer. Whenever you ask this question, you also want to plant the seed that, look, I'm focused on growing with this company. I'm going to be here long term. And you can see that in this sample answer at the bottom where I'm communicating, look, I see myself growing with this company long term. The culture, I understand it's a place where I can grow. And then the reason why you want to focus on the customer, because all companies are customer focused. So you bring that in your answer, they'll know that, okay, this person really wants to make an impact. They know who our customer is and they care about it. And then lastly, the mission. The mission and the values of the company, lead with that so they know that you've actually researched the company and you're excited about what they do and how they contribute and add value in the marketplace. So lead with the company and then finish with the culture and you growing long-term with the company. Make sure you screenshot this one, team. You're going to be asked about how you manage conflict. Why? Because companies are very collaborative. There's so many cross-functional dependencies, so they want to know how you play with others. For this question, make sure you use the STAR method. Always use it for any tell me about a time question. And then make sure you don't do any finger pointing or blaming others. Embrace the conflict. In this example, I'm talking about a sales manager who sees the forecast and say, well, this team has unrealistic goals. Let me have a conversation. That conversation becomes confrontational, but always put your card on the table saying, you know what? I want to make sure we have the best outcome for all the teams. And at the end result, talk about how you were able to get that alignment. It started as confrontational, had conflicts, but because of your interpersonal skills, you were able to get on the same page and drive alignment. That's very important. Alignment is a thing in corporate America in 2025. Being able to work with others, manage that conflict, and get to alignment is a very valuable skill. So make sure you bring that forth whenever you're asked, tell me about a time you managed conflict. Team, I hope this was helpful. If it was, give it a thumbs up. Make sure you like this video, share it with your people, and make sure you follow or subscribe for more career tips. I'll see you next time.